Hi everyone, welcome to this video on organizing your Google Drive. Today we're going to work on getting your Drive all ready for school this year, organizing any stuff you may have had in your Drive from last year or previous school years, and then setting up folders so that you can continue to effectively use your Drive this year. So to start off, we are going to kind of go over the 4 steps to effectively organizing your Google Drive. And using this 4-step process, we're going to do a couple of different things to both kind of organize your old stuff, put it into folders, and then create space for your Drive to grow and put all of your new stuff into folders. So the first step that you have to take is to archive. And what that means is you're going to take all of your old stuff and you're going to put it away essentially in little boxes, which are going to be folders on Google Drive. But all of the old stuff from previous school years are each going to have a folder, and then you can take all of the materials, all of the documents from those school years and organize them within those folders. And that leads us to the sort step. So step number 2 is going to be sorting all of those materials. And what that is after you create all of the different folders for your school years, for each individual school year, then you take all the documents, say, which school year is this from? And you can sort them into the appropriate folder. Then we are going to create new folders so that you can have space to grow for your new classes this year for your Google Drive. So we're going to create a folder for each one of your classes that you think you're going to have material for, so that when you create materials for those classes, you will already have a folder to put them in your Google Drive so you don't lose stuff. And then lastly, we are going to create some steps to utilize those folders. So we're going to make sure that all of the stuff we did today is not a waste of our time, and we're going to create a plan so that you can effectively continue to use your Google Drive. So in a moment, we're going to get started with step number 1 of our 4-step process to organize our Google Drive today, and that is going to be to archive. So after step 1 and after each of the steps in this video, you're going to be instructed to pause this video so that you can then go over to your Google Drive in another tab and complete all of the work that we're talking about in this video. And then you'll come back to the video, hit play, and complete the next step. So let's get started with step 1. That's going to be, like I said, to archive. So the first thing that we are going to do in this archiving process is going to be to make a folder for the previous school year's schoolwork. So whatever grade you're in now, you're going to think back to whatever the previous grade was that you were in, and you're going to make a folder for that grade. You can call it, whatever the previous grade was. So if you're in 9th grade, you'll call it 8th grade. You can name it after the year. So if this year is 2021. Last year's school year would be 2020. So you can name it by the year or the grade. Either one would work. And then what we're going to do is start to kind of sort any assignments or folders into the folder for each year. So all of the old stuff floating around that you see, you're going to decide what school year you think that's from and sort it into the appropriate folder. Then the next step is going to be to go into each folder, so clicking into last year's school's folder, and to create subfolders for different subjects. So if you have a lot of math stuff and a lot of English stuff and you kind of want to separate those two things, you can create subfolders by hitting the new button, again within each folder, and creating smaller folders within the big folders that you just created that can be subject specific. So you can rename them to say English, math, or any of your other subjects within the larger school year folder. And lastly, you're going to want to delete any old assignments. So if you notice that one assignment is kind of half finished, you didn't really do it, or if you have any assignments you really don't think you're going to go back to or ever going to need again, you're going to want to delete those. So anything that seems important that you might want to go back to in the future, save. You have plenty of storage, but if there's stuff that is kind of just extra or it's unfinished and you're not going to need it, definitely go and delete those assignments. You can right click and hit remove, delete, or the little trash icon on Google Drive, and that will delete those assignments for you. So one quick tip I have is don't create folders for years that don't have any work. That's just going to add clutter to your drive. So you probably don't want to go back and create a folder for every year since 1st grade. You probably don't have any work for 1st grade. So if you only have work from maybe 8th grade and 7th grade, or if you only have work from 8th grade, you're really going to only want to create folders for those school years for that existing work so that you're not cluttering up your drive with lots and lots of empty folders. Our next step in this process is going to be to sort all of the files that we have within our Google Drive. We started this a little bit in the last step, but now that you have all of your school years that you might need, work on sorting all of that work into these folders for each school year. As you sort, you're probably going to notice that you have a couple of files that maybe don't fit into a school year. They're things you maybe created for a club or a hobby, or just things that you have that are personal. So create folders for any of those other necessary topics. Create one called personal for your own stuff that doesn't fit maybe into any of these school folders, and maybe one for sports or hobbies or clubs or any of the other things you do in school. And lastly, you might want to create some subfolders within personal, right? You could put your hobbies, you could put other things into that personal folder if you just want to organize and condense down a little bit. So this step is really just kind of figuring out what fits best where and tailoring all of your drive folders to what you might need. I like to create a folder for my clubs, but then I usually have some other documents that don't necessarily fit into any of those categories, like maybe some pictures, or if I create labels for something or anything else, I sort those into a miscellaneous folder. I don't really like having a ton of documents floating around my drive. I tend to forget that they're there. So I find that if they go into miscellaneous, then I kind of just remember where they are. So that's a helpful little tip if you wanted to do that. So at this point, go ahead and start to sort and pause this video. Now we're going to move on to step number 3, which is creating. So now it's time to create folders for this school year. So in your main drive, navigate back out of the subfolders that you've created and create a folder for each subject that you're going to be taking this year. So you probably will have one for whatever math you're taking, one for social studies, one for language arts or English, one for science, and then maybe some for your kind of elective subjects. And at this point, you kind of do want to think about what subjects are going to need a folder. Not every subject will probably need a folder. So maybe for gym, you don't think you're going to need a folder. Maybe for art, you don't think you would need a folder. But if you do think you might need a folder, just create one. You can always go back and delete it later. I would recommend naming the folders the subject name and what period of the day that you have them. So that way you can remember, oh, this is period 3 social studies, right? You can think about what day and what period you have those classes. So for example, like I said, chemistry, period 3. So go ahead and start to do that at this point. You can also right-click the folders in order to color coordinate them. So this is kind of just a little tip or trick. If you either take 2 fingers and tap, click down on your mouse pad, you should be able to see that this is going to bring up this menu right here, which is going to allow you to change the color of your folders. You can pick from all of these different pretty colors if you like to color coordinate maybe your folders or your binders normally. You can color coordinate your Google Drive. So go ahead and pause the video and complete this step now. Our last step, step 4, is going to be to utilize. So the word utilize means to continue to use effectively. So we want to make a plan to continue to utilize or use our Google Drive effectively in an organized way. So we don't want to do all of this work and then just kind of let it become a mess, because that would really be a waste of our time. So what I want you to do is to come up with 3 things that you plan to do in order to make sure that your drive stays neat, organized, and up to date. You're going to put this into the private comments on the assignment on Google Classroom. So go back to the assignment and you're going to put this into the private comments in the assignment so that only I can see them, and you're going to submit that with the assignment. The last thing you're also going to do is after you complete your Google Drive, you are going to take a screenshot of your newly organized Google Drive. So after you come up with this plan, taking your screenshot, the screenshot is going to save into your Google Drive, your downloads folder. What you can do is go back to Classroom, hit that little gray kind of upload icon, or hit Drive and upload that screenshot of your newly beautifully organized Google Drive to Classroom to get credit for this assignment. So there's kind of a two-part thing you need for the assignment. You need both your 3 things that you need to do and this screenshot of your newly organized Google Drive. So this is the end of the video. Great job today. When the video ends, go ahead and complete these final 2 steps and submit on Classroom.